There we are. Good morning. Good morning. It's cold outside. It's rainy. How can it possibly be cold in Florida? But it's cold for Florida. It's probably in the low 70s. Can you believe that? Drizzly, rainy. Good morning, everybody. I can see that we're on properly now. I'm just sort of muttering away here, waiting until I see you all start to come on. So, good morning, good morning, good morning. Today is Saturday. I don't even know what the date. Well, it must be the 6th because yesterday was the 5th of November. So it is the 6th of November, and we're gearing up here now. We're getting ready for what people are thinking about Thanksgiving, I know, which is in 2 or 3 weeks. Next week we have what do we have next week? We have what we Brits call Remembrance Day, um, which is the 11th of November, which is when we honour all of our wonderful, wonderful warriors, our soldiers, our nurses, our you name it, all of those fantastic people who put their lives on the line to keep the rest of us not only safe, but to keep the rest of us free. And so that is next week, and we're going to have a special show and a special night for all of that next week. Anyway, before we start this show, yes, I'm rabbiting away. Before we start this show, I'd like to first of all say good morning to my spirit guide, Grey Eagle, who I've already said good morning to, but here he is standing to my right side, as always. And I would like also to say good morning to Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Rosemary.
Are you ready and raring to go?
Well, you've been telling me what a great story this is going to be, so I'm excited for it.
Well, well, I like the story. I have to say that I really like the story, but that's me. And you know, I've had so many instances, so many stories. I've got I don't know, thousands and thousands of stories to tell over the years that I've been a spiritual medium and a healer. And of course, my life didn't begin then, although it might seem as if it did, because I got trillions of stories to tell about, uh, my childhood, the spooky stuff that happened when I was a kid, my siblings, my parents. Oh, I mean, like everybody, can't we just go on and on with our stories? But because there are so many stories that sort of jam up our heads, we forget. We forget most of them until, of course, we remember. And who knows what reminds us? And it was last week, and I don't know what I was doing, perhaps making the bed or something, and I suddenly had this little memory. I don't know where it came from, but thinking about the story made me really chuckle. And I thought maybe I should tell that story on one of our Saturday mornings. So here we are. Anyway, before we do that, is there anybody there, Chris? Do we have anybody there?
We do. They're logging on fast and furiously.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more until we get everybody on who wants to come on, because some people forget, some people are late, some people's clocks are not on what I would call proper time. Talking of clocks, do we turn the clocks back tonight?
Yeah, spring ahead, fall back.
Okay, well, okay, so I always get that confused. However, I know that it's going to get darker earlier. We're not, if we want to see the sunset, we have to hot foot it out there to the beach. Um, oh gosh, yes, the beach. We have to hot foot it out to the beach an hour earlier tomorrow night than we do tonight. So, yes, so it's going to get darker earlier, which sort of can be a little bit depressing, but at the same time, it can also be sort of quite cozy, can't it? It gets dark, you draw the curtains, you sort of you make a fire or you turn on the fire, whichever we do these days. I actually don't have a fire. Um, but you wrap up in a warm blanket, hot cocoa or hot chocolate, or I don't know, when it's darker earlier, it's sort of cozier. We sort of settle down. We can watch a good movie and wrap ourselves in a nice cozy blanket. Even in Florida, I can pretend, especially if I close the curtains, I can pretend it's cold out there, baby, and snuggle up in a nice warm blanket with my hot chocolate, or maybe even a brandy or a rum and coke or something. And I'm trying to think when the last time was that I actually had an alcoholic drink. I have to think about that one. Anyway, uh, what is the temperature where you are, Chris?
It is now rising to 40 degrees. It was below freezing during the night.
Oh,
So the frost has started to sort of melt off on most of the cars except the ones in the shade.
and here I am saying it's cold here in Florida. Are you laughing at me?
Well, I know your poor frail little body can't take anything below 70 degrees.
It's so true. And and here's another thing that I think people don't always realize, in Florida, we're so used to higher temperatures. And your body gets whatever it is, thinner or thicker. I'm not quite sure what it is, but we're so used to those higher temperatures that when it does get uh, into the mid 70s, which I remember when I lived in England, when I was sort of growing up in England, and also when I was a young woman in England. I mean, if the temperature reached 70, that was the beach day. That was the day we all went out to sunbathe. 70 was good for us. But here I am, and it gets to the mid 70s, and I'm thinking, oh, no, no. And last night, it got down to 64 degrees. That's cold in Florida. It's just the way it is. It's cold. Right, now then. So, all right. So, for all of you who are going to uh, draw the curtains, sit by the fire, cozy up with a blanket. It is story time. Saturday mornings are our story times. And I do have a great story to tell you this morning. I think it's a great story. You may not. Get ready for your comments, everybody, because you might really want to comment about this story. All right. First, before I tell you the story, let's talk a little bit about abandonment, shall we? Um, it's been mentioned on and off over the last few weeks. Every now and again, we get someone who tells us about their husband who left her and the kids, or a wife who has left because her husband got sick. She's dumped him. Abandonment comes in many forms and actually for many reasons. You know, years ago, soldiers were, if they ran on the battlefield, if they turned tail and ran, of course the penalty for that would be that they would be shot. And yet that kind of abandonment I can understand and even sympathize with, because you know the terror of being in battle, the terror of watching men around you, falling down dead or maimed or what have you. I think, that kind of abandonment is, I think, somewhat understandable. The abandonment of, and I know people who've had this happen to them, and I actually know one or two people who've done it themselves. A wife or a husband or somebody gets sick, and it's too much for the partner, and they leave. Now there are different types of abandonment. Let's talk about the parents who leave their children, and as much as we women might want to think that it's the husbands who abandon their kids, uh, and certainly not the wives, that isn't true, because I think there are so many women who also abandon their children. But true abandonment of children is not just leaving everything behind, but not making sure that those kids are supported, uh, not not making sure that at least they have food on the table, or their wives. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Oh, excuse me. Yes. Oh gosh,
God bless you.
it's cold here in Florida. Let me tell you. Anyway, but there's, there are so many different ways of abandoning someone. But uh, today's story is about someone who fully and totally abandons. Uh, anyway, that's all I'm going to say about that for a minute. Having been abandoned myself and seen my daughter abandoned, because there's no other way for it, we had that total, full, and absolute abandonment, which was, you know, um, when my husband left me. Luckily, I only had one child to fend for. Goodness knows what I'd have done if I'd have had six, or even two or three to feed. It would have been nigh and impossible for me. And I know there are some of you listening who've had that experience. But before my husband left, he went to the bank. He forged my signature on different loans, and then literally left, leaving huge debts behind, uh, loans. Therefore the house was in a precarious situation, and he said to the bank, he got this hold of this. He was an assistant bank manager. He got hold of this assistant bank manager and said, "My wife is going to come in and she's going to tell you all kinds of lies about me, but don't believe her because she's just, she's going to exaggerate and make things, and none of what she says will be true." So when my husband disappeared off of the planet, I do believe that he put his hand in his pocket before he actually walked out of the door. I do believe, to be fair to him, I'm trying to be fair, I think he put his hand in his pocket and he pulled out a handful of silver and he left it on the kitchen counter for me. So basically, I was left with a daughter with a stack of debt, loans that my signature had been forged on, and there I was now having to face this assistant bank manager because obviously the letters started coming in and you owe us this and you owe us that. And I went and explained to the assistant bank manager what had happened, that my husband had gone off, and with the next door neighbor. He did it twice. He did it first with one neighbor, then with another neighbor. That's a whole other story. Anyway, we're talking about abandonment, and actually sitting there and facing this assistant bank manager. I sat and I explained everything that had happened, and I said, if you give me time, I'm going to do my best to work this out, and blah blah blah. And he looked me in the eye after all of this, making myself so vulnerable. He looked me in the eye and he said to me, I'll never forget it. He looked me in the eye and he said to me, "Your husband told me you'd come in and say all of this, and he told me not to believe you, and quite frankly, I don't." We could go more into that. That's not this story. About a year later, after now getting more and more and more letters from the bank, and now about to lose the house, they were threatening to take the house away from me, quite rightly too. But it was hard because I couldn't go back to the bank, because I couldn't go back and face that humiliation. But finally I had no choice, and but made sure when I booked my appointment that it would be with the manager and not the assistant. I wanted to speak to somebody else. And this poor bank manager, he was so annoyed, he was so angry with me, he was so furious, because in his mind, that bank had been writing to me for over a year and I'd not even bothered to reply. Until after his tirade and saying to me, "If you'd have only come in sooner, if you'd have explained this to me sooner, we maybe could have helped you, but right now we're not obliged to help you at all." And I said to him, "But I did come in sooner." And he looked me right in the eye. He said, "No, you didn't." And I said, "Actually, yes, I did." And I told him the story. And I said, "The reason I haven't been back is because your assistant called me a liar and told me that I was lying about the whole thing." Eventually, that bank manager was my best friend. He helped me. He held off on the loan. She said, unfortunately, I can't forgive them, but he was amazing. And that poor assistant bank manager had to come in and apologize to me. Anyway, that was a sweet moment in my life. Abandonment creates, it's like you throw a stone into a pond. The ripples, not only do you have ripples on the surface that you can see, and when you look at someone, or if you know your family see you, or somebody's looking at you as that person who's been abandoned, they may well see the ripples on the surface of the pond there. But there are ripples that go very, very deep. Or that stone, as it's going deeper and deeper into the pond, the ripples are going deeper and deeper as well. But people don't see those deep ripples, and they don't see that deep hurt that is created by this awful abandonment. And it's, for me, and I'm sure for many of you out there who have had this experience, for many of you, it's not just that you have been abandoned, the wife has been abandoned. It is, for me anyway, that how could a father abandon his child? How could he put a few silver coins on a countertop and expect that somehow or another I'm going to be able to feed my child? And we talk about, oh, well, there's always help. So you go to social services, you go to this person. You know, you have to wait, and that always doesn't work. And apparently I didn't qualify because I had, £10 in the bank, $10 or roughly that in the bank. So I didn't qualify until I'd used up all of that $10 that I had in the bank. What do you do if you have no friends? What if you have no family who are going to help you? Abandonment, the ripples run deep, 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 deep. We're all very fond of saying, though, aren't we? Well, they'll get theirs one day. It'll turn around on them. One day they will. They will. They will have to pay for what they did. The truth of the matter is, they seem to be getting away with it again and again and again, don't they? They don't really pay. However, here is my story. So, okay, once upon a time. How you doing there, Chris? Are we good?
Oh, yeah. People are very much active in the chat room and loving your story and not liking your ex very much.
Oh well, yeah. Well, if I could swear on this show, well, you would know that it would be a four-letter word. It wouldn't be very nice. Moving on past him, because boy, oh boy, oh boy, that was so long ago. We don't need that negativity in our lives. So, all right. So once upon a time, I had a client. She came to me for a consultation, and her husband had, you got it, abandoned her. All right. What had happened was they were happily married. They had this beautiful baby. It was their first child, very, very excited. And when this little boy was born, unfortunately, he was born with severe cerebral palsy. It took the husband, I'm going to say 3 to 6 months, something like that, before he fled, leaving this poor young woman with this child. Now, that's tough. But again, I do understand why people get frightened. I understand why the husband, not that I like it or agree with it, don't misunderstand me, but I do understand why people are so frightened and so terrified, and they feel that they just can't handle things at all in any way. So in a way, I could sympathize with what happened. What I couldn't sympathize with was the fact that he, not only fled her and his baby, he didn't consider them his responsibility anymore. So no money was forthcoming, and so on and so forth. However, I'm going to say, when this little boy was probably a year old, this guy, the husband, kept coming back and forth into her life, you know, obviously not quite wanting to give up the house, obviously not quite wanting to give up the life that he had. And you could say that he was torn, and he told a really good story. And so at some point, he came and he sat down with her and he told her how sorry he was and that he still loved her and so on and so forth. Anyway, the upshot of it was that they went to bed, and the upshot of that was another baby. And the the upshot of it was, as soon as she told him she was pregnant again, that was the end of that, and he abandoned her pregnant and his little boy with severe cerebral palsy. You're thinking like me now, aren't you? What a nice guy. Not only did he abandon them, he abandoned them in the truest sense of the word. He tried to ignore them. Fortunately for her, he had a business. He had a plumbing business. Fortunately for her, she knew where he lived. Not that it made much difference, because she had to fight for every single penny, and he very often went without giving her any money for the kids. And you can imagine, can't you, what a nightmare this is for this woman? She's having to deal now with a little boy who's now roughly 3 or 4 years old. And as I said, she came to see me at some point during all of this. She'd already had the little girl by this time, and she came for a consultation with me, and we talked about this. And then she would bring her little boy to me for healing. And he was a darling. He was just a beautiful, beautiful child, albeit he couldn't speak, couldn't walk, couldn't talk. You know what I'm saying? But he was beautiful. And this lovely girl who had this awful, awful situation thrust upon her to deal with all by herself. We became good friends, and she would often call me up and tell me about things, and tell me things, what was going on, what was happening, and how she'd have to fight her husband again for the money, on and on and on, and so on and so forth. Moving on now, here I was, living in my house was a nice house. I decided that I was going to have the kitchen completely redone. In the kitchen, or part of the kitchen, the dining part of the kitchen, was a huge room, and part of it was dining and the other part of it was the kitchen. In the dining part, originally, there in the corner, and in fact, it was put there to hide the big pipes, the water pipes. There was a bathroom above there, and so there were these big water pipes coming down. We built a cupboard. We built like a, I don't know, a coat closet, let's say. So put coats and bags and hats. There was a shelf on the top for hats and things, and of course in those days I used to wear fur hats and you know, all that sort of thing. Anyway, this cupboard was sort of for that purpose, and in the bottom of the cupboard were shoes and boots and things. You got the picture, right? So I decided I wanted my kitchen completely renovated, and one of the things that we needed to deal with was this cupboard. It was not big enough or something anyway. So I decided, let's rip it out and build something, you know, sort of bigger, better, and so on. So we had the builders in, and they were great, and they put in a new kitchen cabinets, and they put new floors in, and everything was looking splendid. And then of course at some point we had to have the plumber in to come and fix, you know, do all the new plumbing and so on. It's kitchen, right? And so I got very friendly with the builders. I'm a nice person. When I get people in my house, I get builders in my house, right? I make them cups of tea. I've been known to even make them sandwiches for lunch. I always think if you're nice to them, they'll do a good job. Not always, doesn't always work, but mostly it works. So here I am. And anyway, this one particular day, the plumber and his mate were working in the kitchen, and I had to go to the grocery store, so I left them to it. And they were at the stage of ripping out the cupboard. and with all the coats, which had all the coats and hats. Now I'd emptied it, it was fine, there was nothing in there. All they had to do was rip it out, then they were going to clad the pipes or whatever it was they were going to do. So off I go to the grocery store, I come back, and there is my plumber sitting on a stool in the kitchen. He was shaking like a leaf. He was shaking so badly. His face was as white as a sheet. And as I walked through the door, he really turned on me, spun on me, and he started screaming at me. You know, you should have told me this. I had no idea what he was talking about, but it was obviously this thing that had happened to him had only just happened. And the guy who was working with him said to me, it's not, look, hey Rosemary, it's not your fault, but he's totally unnerved. It scared him to death. And you could see this poor plumber was shaking like a leaf, trembling so hard. And so he had to let out this fear, anger, whatever it was. He had to let it out some way or another. So eventually I said to him, well, what happened? And apparently, years before, we'd built an extension to the house, and we lived in a farming community. And at some point we'd had rats up in the rafters as we were building. You know, they get in different places, and I'd go to bed at night and I'd be lying there listening to them gnawing on the wood in the rafters, and we got rid of them. That was fine. We got rid of them. We put, unfortunately, I have to tell you, we put rat poison down, and you can't have your house overrun by rats. It's okay. Never thought anything about it, but apparently when rats, you know, are dying, what they try to do is they try to find any kind of water source. And this cupboard, as I told you, was hiding the water pipes and so on. And apparently this plumber had gone in, and they were tearing down the cupboard, and he was sort of reaching behind the shelf, trying to get the shelf out. And he felt what he thought was that I must have left. You're getting this, aren't you now? You're getting the picture now, right? He must have thought that I'd left a fur hat behind the shelving, and she sort of, anyway, this thing, he could feel it. He could feel this furry thing, and he sort of grabbed hold of it, and he yanked, and it wouldn't come out at first. And he finally managed to yank it out. And this enormous dead rat went right in his face and hit him right in the face. And he apparently screamed like a girl and dropped the rat. And this had only just happened as I walked through the door. So I've told you the first story. I've told you about this wonderful woman with her beautiful boy and the little girl. A good story, right? Nice story, sweet story. Did you get the part about, and her husband had a plumbing business? You know, I didn't know it at the time. I had no idea who he was. And as I said, I get quite friendly with my builders because I like to feel that if I treat them well, they'll do a good job. And this poor young man, this poor young plumber was so excited because his wife was due to have a baby, and it was their first child, and he was so excited about all of this. And I've been hearing about this for days and days because they were sort of holding on and waiting for the moment when if she calls and has to go into hospital, I have to leave the house immediately. And of course, so he was so all excited about this first baby that he was going to have, his first child that he was going to have. Anyway, so here he is, this poor guy is totally shaken, absolutely shaken to, beyond reason. He finally calms down, he apologizes for shouting at me and so on and so forth. And it happened a couple of days later that my lovely client with her beautiful young son, now he'd be probably now about 5 years old, and she was bringing him for healing that night. And I was actually telling her this story of how this poor plumber had yanked out this rat that had literally practically hit him in the face and terrified him. And she said, as I'm telling this story, she's looking at me, she's listening, and she said, you know, what was the plumber's name? And so I told her his first name, and she said, no, what's the name of his business? And I told her. She went as white as a ghost for 1 second, and then she started laughing, and she couldn't stop laughing. And yes, you've got it. This was her husband who'd abandoned her, who'd been telling me about his apparently new wife who was having their first baby, and his first baby, and how excited he was about this first baby. Meanwhile, somewhere, who cares, he didn't, was another wife with a little girl and a little boy with cerebral palsy who he'd totally failed to mention because he'd abandoned them. Well, she laughed and I started laughing, and I thought, wow, we talk about retribution. We talk about things, we talk about people getting their comeuppance. And I do like to think that when this plumber came face to face with the rat, this dead, nasty, ugly, huge rat, he actually was coming face to face with himself, because boy was he ever the biggest rat of all. That's my funny story. I think it's a really funny story. I think it's such a sad story that this poor woman was left abandoned with 2 children when her husband, there he was in a new house, his business doing well, with a new wife and a new baby about to be born. It's so unfair, isn't it? It seems to be so unfair. But I do like to think that perhaps Grey Eagle had something to do with the fact that the rat came face to face with the rat. The end. Did you like that story, Chris? Are you there? Oh no. Chris?
I am here.
I thought I'd lost you for a minute.
I had the jets flying overhead, so I didn't want that to
Oh, right.
impact your story.
Did you like it?
I said, "Oh my goodness." Judith saying he came face to face with himself. That's what I was thinking. Ha ha.
Yes, well, exactly. Well, that's what I thought. I thought, boy, oh boy, the rat came face to face with the rat. Yeah, I just, it makes me chuckle. It's sort of not enough retribution, is it, really?
No,
Because that man did everything he possibly could to not pay his alimony. My husband never paid a penny in alimony, ever, which actually bit him in the bum in the end, because when we finally, oh gosh, several years later, several years later, when we finally found him, because he was sort of in hiding. Well, not, he was, who knows where he was, we could never find him. But when we finally did, and it finally came to the divorce, and it finally came to the settlements, he owed so much money. It was actually as my lawyer beautifully put it, it was prison. And she gave me the option. She said, you can put him in prison, for whatever it was, several months, 6 months to a year, or something like that, which he would never have been able to take. Or, what shall we do? And I said, well, he can sign the house over to me. I'll take that. I'll have the entire house. He can sign it over to me. And, he has to give up his half of the house to me or goes to prison. And that's what happens. So sometimes we do get a little retribution. Sometimes it does work out that, people sort of have to have the consequences of their actions. So often it seems that they don't. But I always feel, and I think that my lovely friend whose little boy, that is now sort of grown, or certainly a little girl is now fully grown. I like to think that, yes, all right, it was hardship, and yes, all right, it was tough. But boy, oh boy, did she ever get the best deal of it. Absolutely got the best deal of it. Chris, let's have our comments and questions, shall we?
Absolutely. Cheryl says, "What are the odds that would have been the same husband?"
I know, right? I mean, it was a sort of a weirdly sort of, well, how it happened was just amazing. You couldn't make it up if you tried, could you? But yeah, I mean, and there were lots and lots of plumbers and plumbing businesses. And all the time that the builders were there and all the time that the plumber was there, I never, ever, ever put the two together because he was talking about his young wife and she's pregnant and telling stories, and he seemed to be a really nice guy, very carefree, talked a great talk, never once mentioned that he had. And I do remember saying to him, is this your first child? And yeah, it was his first child. Forget the other two. uh, what a rat, right? Anyway, uh, keep going, Chris.
Carolyn says, "Oh my gosh, what a story. Amazing. There are no coincidences."
I know. I love it. I love it. And I'd forgotten all about that story. I'd forgotten all about that plumber until, for whatever reason, it just came into my mind. Anyway, there it is. Keep going,
Maggie
Chris.
says, "So amazing. Love this story." Vicky says, "Oh, I like that. Karma." And Rhonda says, "Great story. Nice that you got to see the retribution firsthand."
Yeah, it was really nice. And it made me chuckle. It still makes me chuckle now after all of these years, still makes me chuckle. Yeah.
All right. I've got to scroll between two comments, and I'm trying to go back to the original comment.
I know how difficult it is for you sometimes, Chris. I know it's a bit of a painstaking job that you have to do.
Well, I think I may just have to stick to the second comment. Soraya came on
Hi,
saying
Brian.
that she had seen you years and years ago in the Netherlands on a TV show
Oh gosh,
and
yes.
that you had given her a message. So I
Oh,
typed back in the chat knowing you would ask, what was that about? So here is her response. Um, oh gosh, my daughter drowned at the age of 6, and Rosemary told me what happened at the hospital and how she had difficulties breathing, but also that I had a lock of hair in my purse. She even told me that Priscilla knew I had a hole in one of my teeth and that I had to see the dentist. And how happy Priscilla was that she had the possibility to tell me that she was a real angel now. She told me how Priscilla was standing proud, like she always did, when she had to tell me something important. My dear Rosemary, to me, you are one of my dearest friends.
oh,
You've helped me in so many ways, and I still can smell her scent. To me, that is the gift of heaven, and keeps showing me that there is so much more between heaven and earth.
wow. Well, oh, darling, thank you so very much for sharing that story. I did used to go sometimes to Germany, sometimes occasionally to France, certainly to the Netherlands. I think that you might have been talking about the Tinnicker show that you were on, maybe. And they had studio audiences, and of course I've done it in America as well. We all know about the Oprah Winfrey show, the Lisa show, one of my favorites, the Larry King show, and Lisa was lovely. I've been on many TV shows here too, and what we do is we sort of give messages to the audience, and of course they're televised live, and so I think this was probably one of those televised live shows, the Tinnicker show, and it was always really really nice for me uh, to um, to be able to give messages from loved ones in the spirit world, and particularly to the children in the spirit world, because you all know that I feel very strongly that the loss of a child must be, as a parent myself, must be the hardest to bear, not that I'm making less of anybody's loss in any way, but I always feel that a child must be the hardest to bear, because we expect, we have our children, we help them, we teach them, we nurture them, we watch them grow, and then we go. We leave them behind knowing that we've done the best job that we possibly can so that they can continue in their lives. And to have a child leave before us has to be the worst. And darling, I'm so happy that you shared that with us, and here you are again. So you found me again, right? So that's so wonderful. Chris.
Um, Another wonderful thing that I've just noticed has happened. Nancy has joined us in the chat room and she said, I have not seen or heard Rosemary Altea in years. I'm
Oh,
very happy the algorithms have changed. And what I want to say is to all of our people that show up for every show and use the hashtag Rosemary Altea in the chat room, look what you've done. You've helped people who have not heard or seen from Rosemary in years suddenly find her. So keep up the good work and thank you for doing that.
and thank you, Nancy. And how long ago is it? And how do I know you? Let us know, because we do like to, don't we, Chris? We love to hear the backstories of people, don't we?
Absolutely. Nancy says, I think my dad is facing consequences from his past lack of actions now.
Oh, that's so sad. But then there you go. You know, here's what I'm going to suggest for anyone who's listened to the story this morning, or for anyone who uh, has, because none of us are perfect, and there's not one of us who hasn't done one bad thing in our lives, at least, or often more. If you if you feel that you want to say sorry to somebody for your actions, if you feel that you need to make retribution of some kind, or just to, you know, connect with the you know, the family, or to, or if there's somebody you're not speaking to and who was a good friend, and you know, you'd like to get back in contact with, or you feel you wonder how they're doing, or you feel a little bit guilty about something, please put it right. You would be stunned, amazed at the amount of people in the spirit world who I hear say to me, if only, if only I'd said something, if only I'd done something, if only I'd stood up for her, if only I'd stood up for him, if only I had intervened, you know, when I could have, if only I'd stood by that person, if only I'd been loyal, if only. So if you are one of those people who has any little if only in your life, if only I'd done this and if only I'd done that, you can make it right. If that person does not want to know you, that's fine. But at least, you know, if you feel that you should say sorry, you might. And also understand this: when somebody says I'm sorry, they're not necessarily saying I'm sorry that I did that to you. They could be saying I'm so sorry that you feel that way, but genuinely sorry. I am really sorry if what I did upset you. It was not my intention. Just put it out there. Don't wait until you're talking to me on the other side and you say, if only, if only, if only, because life is too short for our if onlys. So if you do nothing else, at least think about what I'm saying, and hopefully, you know, step up, be brave. I really shouldn't have done that. I'm really sorry. If only I had not said or done. I did not mean to hurt you. It was not my intention. Just step up and own it, and just understand we're all human, you know. We all make mistakes. We all do things that we wish. I wonder if the rat is thinking now, after all these years later, I wonder if the rat is thinking, if only. In his shoes, boy, oh boy, would I have been thinking, if only. And it's just, it doesn't make things necessarily right, but it brings peace. Remember what I said: when someone hurts you or upsets you, if you hurt or upset somebody else, you see the effects, you see the ripples on the surface, don't you? You see the effects. If somebody gets angry or somebody gets tearful or whatever it is, you see the ripples on the surface, but that pebble keeps going down and down and down, deep, 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 and the ripples go deep, deep, deep. So we can, you know, cause so much more hurt um, than we realize. So let's make it right. None of us are perfect. I've had my share of things that I've done to hurt other people, sometimes not intentionally, mostly not intentionally, occasionally intentionally. Oh dear, does that make me a bad person? Oh no, wait a minute, it makes me human, doesn't it? So there you go. Chris.
Well, there are a number of people that while you were sharing your story were sharing their stories where they had been abandoned or a spouse had done some not nice things to them. Um, so I think addressing what a person who has felt that abandonment or the bad behaviors of others and, victim mentality might be a good way to address most of them.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I tell my story of my husband, who was definitely a rat. No doubt about it. He did awful things. He was manipulative, but he was sly and cheated and lied, and not just once, unfortunately, but that was his habit. He was a continual. I think that even before we got married, he had, went to bed with our assistant, uh, you know, and then she left as a wedding present in my bathroom. She left his and hers little hand towels. Well, you all know what I was inclined to do with those, don't you? But I think there are people who do make one mistake and are truly regretful for it. And I think there are people who just don't even see it as a mistake. It's a way of life. I think, they are truly the rats in our human existence. But I think, if you if you take on, poor me, I'm the victim, and look what it did to me, uh, you're just making your life, you're letting them win, first of all, and you're making your life miserable. Why would you do that to yourself? Um, when we do the bottom brick exercise, I make it very clear to people, this is not about pointing the finger. This is not about blaming other people. And the story this morning is certainly not about me pointing the finger at my husband. He's a rat. So what? He's a rat who is not in my life anymore. Yay. I mean, so I tell the story of my husband to illustrate that I too have had these experiences. I too relate to all of you who have had those experiences. But I could do one of two things, and it's all about attitude, isn't it? It's all about your state of mind. So I could bemoan, bewail, and sort of poor me, and this happened, and poor Samantha, and yes, he abandoned my child, blah, blah, blah. Or I could say, well, too bad for him then, because he missed out on me. And that is the choice I like to make. I refuse to allow other people to dictate to me my life, how I'm going to feel and how I'm going to live it. And I feel so very blessed at the end of the day that I don't have to deal with the rat who was in my life. That rat scurried away and unfortunately scurried towards somebody else, and that's their problem. I am so blessed that I don't have to deal with that anymore, that I don't have to, put up with it. I'm so blessed that I got rid of the rat. So please, if you're sitting there and you're feeling like you were a victim, yes, of course, but you're only a victim for a moment. If you want to be a victim for life, it's not their choice, not the choice of the person who did it to you. That's your choice. So please, if you're feeling victimized, if you're feeling sorry for yourself, just think about this. What would it be like if you still had that rat in your life again? It would be a nightmare. It would be miserable. And who on earth wants that? So, climb out of your victim mode and be a survivor, because that's what I am. And actually not just a survivor. Because that rat disappeared from my life, I found joy and absolute wonder in my life. Um, and I know if you look at it in the right way, you can find joy in yours. I shall read your stories later with Chris. Once we've ended the show, I should go back in there and take a look at some of your stories. So thank you for writing them, and thank you for sharing. But I'm hoping that my story says to you, don't live with the rat any longer. Don't let it gnaw away at the inside of you. Um, you know, let it go. Let go, let God, move forward and smile because you're the winners. Chris.
Cheryl says, I have contacted several people from my past and said thank you and sorry.
Oh, good.
And then
Yes,
Maggie
well,
says, and this is tied in, Rosemary. Maggie says, I've tried with a friend over the years recently. I said that I love them, but it was not received, and the break was all due to my ex husband's actions. So, what do you say to people when you've reached out and you've said your sorries, but it's not accepted? There's a few people have commented that way.
well, when you reach out, you need to reach out without expectation. You can hope that they take it on board and they say, I'm glad you reached out and and thank you for that and so on. And but when people hold on to hurts and pain, they hold on to the bitterness within themselves. There's really nothing you can do about it. You did your part, let it go. If they come back to you and say thank you and you reunite or you build a different kind of a relationship and often a better relationship, isn't that brilliant? But you don't need to keep on trying. Maggie, cut it out. You've said your piece, let it go and move forward in your life. Stop worrying. You can't change other people's lives and you can't change other people's thoughts and feelings. What you can do is you can change your own. You can, you've done what you needed to do. You've said your piece. That's all you can do. Let it go. Let it go and move forward. You finally said the thing that you should have said. And Maggie, cut out and it was good due to my husband, blah, blah, blah. Because actually, it really wasn't. Your husband may have been the catalyst. However, if you have a good friend, and especially if you reach out and you say, I'm so sorry that this shouldn't have happened, or I wish it hadn't happened, or whatever you've said, um, it's down to each and every one of us. We make the decision. Are we going to listen to that person? Are we going to allow that person to affect our lives and our friendships or not? And so it's not your husband who's at fault here. Your friend or ex-friend, whoever, made a decision to believe that and made a decision to move on. Let it go. Let it be. And Maggie, I I know your story. I know how difficult life has been for you. Stop pointing the finger because it's getting you nowhere and it's just holding on to the bitterness. And I hate to see you do that to yourself, my darling. So let it go. I feel as if what is that song? Let it go, let it go. I don't know
From
what this. I don't
Frozen.
know how it
Yeah.
goes actually, but let it go, would you? Okay, Chris.
Cheryl says, oh, and by the way, Gray Eagle told me to be patient about our upcoming move. Sure enough, yesterday we got the okay from the bank loan, and now we will have our own place. So, love to
See,
all.
see. I know you got a little bit impatient, and I know you said, yeah, but how long do I have to be patient for? But there you have it, you see, and everything turned out fine.
Gray Eagle helped me keep the faith, is what she said.
I love it. I love it. Well, he's put his hand on my shoulder because he helps me to keep the faith as well. I need healing on this shoulder, by the way, just in case you've forgotten. Just having a little conversation with him there. uh, but he's smiling at your acknowledgement, so that's great. I'm glad. I'm really, really pleased.
Claudia says, Dear Rosemary, your words always bring light to people.
Is this our Claudia,
I believe it
or
is.
maybe even another? We're trying to get a date together just in case, for us to chat. And thank you for that, my darling. I appreciate it. Okay, Chris.
Aislinn says, I pray for my ex. I pray for his well being. Far, far away from me.
Love it. Yeah, I love it. It's funny because when you've said that, when you read that out, Chris, it reminds me. I mean, I actually hope for my mother. I hope that she's happy. I hope that she's wherever she's doing really well. But, you know, far, far away from me. Thank you. I love that. Keep going, Chris.
Judith says, as I have aged and have a little more understanding, I do put forth an effort to let people know I'm sorry if I hurt them with my words or activities when I was younger. I also speak to those who have passed on to the next dimension of life. I will have my turn on the other side too.
Brilliant. I love it, Judith. And you know I love you too. Chris, keep going.
All right. Trying to find one here. Cheryl's asking, we have a couple of Cheryls on, so please don't everybody think I'm always picking on Cheryl. Um, that little that little boy must have been an earth angel,
Oh,
but
yeah.
it's a question she's asking.
Yes, I think so. Without a doubt. Yes. And, I mean, it was a joy for me. It was a joy for me to not just to be, to have the opportunity to give him healing, but it was a joy for me to see him with his mother who just worshipped this child, looked upon this child as the special child that he was. She was a wonderful mother, a wonderful healer, a wonderful carer, very sensitive, and boy, oh boy, was she ever better off without the rat in her life, which she did come to realize. But we did chuckle, I have to say. Does that make us really mean? Just, I'm not sure. Well, who cares anyway? I still laugh about it. Chris.
Well, as you said last night on Off the Cuff, the one thing that saves you over and over and over again from all these trials and tribulations is your sense of humor.
Yes,
So that's good that you
yes,
see it in every facet, basically.
I know. Well, my daughter and I, we both say the same thing, and sometimes, occasionally, we come across people who don't know how to laugh, and my daughter will literally groan to me and say, "Oh, Mum, it's such hard work dealing with people who don't have a sense of humour," which of course it is. But then we laugh about it because we think we laugh about anything and everything. Talking of which, we are going to be having our cracking up show coming on with my two friends Kay and Kay. The reason it's called cracking up is because they're K and K, and I'm RA, and so we put RA me in the middle, and the two K's outside. Crack, KRAK, cracking up. We're going to have that show, so watch for that. We'll be having that sorted out. Uh, Not sure if it's next week, but definitely the week after. I was speaking to my friend Kay and saying, sort out some dates. So they're going to sort out some dates. And we will be cracking up with tales from them. They are two British girls. I will make the third British girl. And we just, although we talk very serious about very serious things, and one of the K's is a wonderful student of mine and a fully fledged healer and teacher. And the other K is a really great friend of mine who was nursing for most of her life. So she also has those healing abilities. And she was the one I visited in Hong Kong. So she's got lots of stories about Hong Kong. So we're going to share all of those with you on our new cracking up. Tomorrow, you realize where I'm going with this, Chris, right? Tomorrow is our cooking show, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Yes, we're making apple crumble. You can find the recipe on my website. No, not on my website, on my Facebook page. While we're waiting for the apple crumble to bake, so I can then show you what it looks like, I might be showing you also how to make some pita chips. Yes, I haven't given you the recipe. You need pocket pita, olive oil, and garlic salt. There you go. If you want to join in with me, or you could always just watch what I'm doing, We'll be chatting throughout it all. Then, oh, wait a minute, you can rewind and watch me again and again and again until you absolutely know what to do and how to do it. So, okay, Chris, is there anything else that we need to address before we end the show this morning?
No, because you're right at time right now,
Yeah.
Rosemary.
So I'd like to thank you all for joining me. Okay, we will be hopefully. Wait a minute. Yes, I've done. I've done. What have I done? I've done story time today. Cooking show tomorrow. On Thursday, we will be celebrating or honouring more like our heroes because it will be, I think in America you call it Veterans Day. I think that's right.
Yes.
In England we call it Remembrance Day. Wearing poppies and all of that sort of thing, remembering our heroes. I should be particularly remembering my father, who was an absolute hero, and my brother, who was also in the military. And we're hoping for them to be around. So we'll be doing that on Thursday morning. And then on Thursday night, we're inviting people to join us to share with us their stories. Chris, what do people have to do if they want to join us on that show on Thursday night?
I've just put it on the screen, but we have a Zoom room set aside right now, Stories of Warriors. So if you email the office, we'll give you this secret Zoom link so that you can pre-register and come on.
Yeah, we don't want to charge anybody for this, even though we do have to pay for all of the Zoom stuff. We really want people to, feel free to join. Unfortunately, the way to make sure that we do this and to not get people on that we don't want on, because we know there are always those people who like to disrupt, we are doing it this way. So, this is the only reason we're giving the secret code to joining us on Thursday night. So please feel free. All we're doing is we're just stopping people from getting on that we don't want to get on, but we'll be doing that on Thursday night. And we'll be doing other things as well. And of course, we'll be having more off the cuffs. So pay attention, watch what we're doing. So tomorrow morning, yes, I'll be cooking, making delicious apple crumble, the recipe. It is such an easy dessert. I promise you, it's the easiest dessert, one of the easiest to make. So delicious. And of course, we've still got all of those apples falling off the trees. So we have to use them, don't we? So that's what we're doing tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And of course, we should be back on Thursday for another The Spirit World Sees All. And we should be back here again next Saturday with another story. We're all over the place. If you want to know more about us, please, this is what I'm going to suggest you do. Go to the website and subscribe. It costs you nothing. We will not inundate you with emails. We will only send out maybe 2 or 3, maybe 4 a month. You were worried I was going to say a day then, weren't you? That's all we send out. But you get the newsletter. Also, for all of our subscribers, we're going to be rewarding you, saying thank you to you, actually, so very, very much for subscribing, because we love to have people subscribing, and we love to have the numbers. We're going to be, at the end of this month, we're going to send all of our subscribers a little gift through the email. So watch for that. And then from time to time, as we go along, we should be again saying thank you to our subscribers by just, letting them have a little something that if you don't subscribe, you don't get. So just saying, subscribe. Go to the website, rosemaryaltea.com, or one name. If you want to know any more about us, if you want your own story, if you want to join in any of our webinars, please email Chris, Kris, at rosemaryaltea.com. And tell us what you want. If you want a consultation, if you want to know more about our books or our meditations, and on it goes. Just email the office, and Chris, who is absolutely marvelous, will help you out. So I think that's it for today. Thank you so much, all of you, for joining us. Thank you, Chris. what would we do without our lovely, lovely people who join us every week when we do our thing? And we love to hear your stories, and thank you for sharing. I'd specifically like to say thank you, of course, as always, to Gregor for being right here and helping us with all of this. So until I see you all again, hopefully tomorrow morning, making apple crumble. No, it is not apple crisp. For those of you thinking it's apple crisp, no, 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 no. It's apple crumble. I'll see you in the morning at 11 a.m. Until I see you again, all of you, please, please, please have a very, very blessed rest of the day. Have a very blessed weekend, everybody. Bye-bye.